Hi everyone, I'm Shannon Boone. Welcome to the series Brave. During the next 6 weeks, Pastor Tim Cinnamon and Pastor Adam Myers are going to teach us what it means to be brave. Your kids are going to learn the same thing, so we hope that this sparks some great conversations at home and in your group after you hear from Pastor Tim and Pastor Adam. But right now, let's hear from Pastor Tim about what it means to be brave enough to love.
Hello. In this session, we're talking about being brave enough to love, and those two things don't seem to go together culturally very well. When we think about courage and bravery, we tend to think of like a skill that's mastered over time. I try things, I get braver, I grow in courage. But love, we speak of love completely differently. We speak of love more as maybe this accidental thing that happens to us sometimes, or this thing we have no control over. Like, even think about the way we talk about love. We say things like, I fell in love, or I found love. It's like a treasure that we were hunting for. But when we read Scripture, we find that courage and love go hand in glove, and that they actually are really, really closely related. But it does change our view of love. In fact, Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, writes extensively about love. He writes this way. He says, "If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gifts of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but I do not have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to the hardship that I may boast, but I do not have love, I gain nothing." And then he says, love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it's not proud. Love does not dishonor others. It rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. But where there are prophecies, they will cease. And where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears. So when I was a child, I talked like a child, and I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me, for now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know in full, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain, faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love. Now, I'm sure we've all been to a wedding where we've had a similar experience where this scripture is read. The pastor stands up and he's getting ready to unite these two people in marriage. And so as a way to celebrate that and commemorate that, he reads this passage. And it's a good and fitting time to read that passage. But that is not the intent that Paul had when he wrote in 1 Corinthians. He wasn't trying just to create something fun and poetic to read at weddings that would remind us of how powerful love is. In fact, Paul was writing to a group of people who didn't necessarily like each other very much. The Corinthian church was in the midst of a lot of fighting, and they couldn't agree on how the church was supposed to be run, and they couldn't agree on what should happen to certain people when they got out of line. And so Paul doesn't write this to a group of people who are all gathered together to unite two people in holy matrimony. He writes this to a group of people who, quite frankly, are kind of fed up with each other and fighting. And he says some really powerful things. Like, he says that without love, I'm pretty useless. He says, like, no matter what other gifts I have or what other abilities I have or whatever strengths I have, if I don't use those in love, they're really kind of aimless. And then he goes on and says that love, it's going to require some work. I mean, think about all the things he listed there about trust and patience and honor. These aren't things that come easier naturally to us sometimes. They're going to take practice and they're going to take work. We're going to have to develop the skill. Much like we develop courage, we have to develop our love. And then he says that there's like faith and hope and then love, but the greatest of these in love. And he makes them kind of synonymous with one another. He says that what remains is faith, hope, and love, the greatest of these in love. And I think he puts them all together because like faith and like hope, love's going to grow over time. Let me ask you a question. How regularly do we flex our gifts, our strengths, or our abilities without love? I mean, when we correct others, do we do it only because, or solely because, or even primarily because we love and care about this person and we want what's good for them? Or are we just frustrated and angry and they do something that annoys us and we want them to stop it? See, that's what Paul's saying, right? Like, we might be able to discern what's right and wrong and have knowledge to help people, but if we don't start with love, then it's useless, it's meaningless. And so today, as you're in your groups, we're talking about being brave enough to love, having enough courage. And I just want to challenge you with a few thoughts. Paul here says that we need to be brave enough to love even when we don't feel like it. That there are going to be times when we're going to want to maybe dishonor someone else or not be patient with someone else, but we're charged to love even when we don't feel like it. Not just at weddings. We need to be reminded of this passage daily. And he also says that we need to be brave enough to love the right way, that we would love the correct way, that we wouldn't get lost in the misunderstanding of love or some Hollywood romance novel version of love, but that we would root our lives in scriptural, biblical love. Paul also challenges us to love always. That no matter what we're doing or how we're interacting with people or who we're interacting with, that we be motivated by love. Maya Angelou put it this way. She said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." We are ambassadors for Christ. We represent Him, and we should always, no matter what we're attempting to do, leave people knowing that we love them.